Hey YouTube, welcome back. We're continuing our work today on this vintage US made Peavey Predator. I've got the neck off now. I really always enjoy the accessibility of bolt-on necks. Leo Fender designed these to be easier so that if you had damage to your neck, damage to the head, just throw another neck on there. It makes it so much easier. Easy to work with. And I've been able to work a little bit on this, just starting to, since this is vintage, the frets were already very well leveled and somewhat worn down, but just a few, there's a couple little nicks, and I'm going to just continue to use my sanding block, my fret sanding block, very light, I'm not taking this down much, just smoothing, adding a little bit of leveling, but not a whole lot of work. This neck is in really fantastic shape, and I'm so impressed with the quality of this. The nut is on there installed just perfectly, flush all around, absolutely no gaps, and hopefully you can see this. Let me see if it'll zoom in there. This is a one piece where the fretboard is part of the neck, and it is really beautifully done. The fretboard itself has a semi-gloss finish, but the back is distinct, has a satin, almost flat, but it's still very well finished. And you can see even after all these years, after all the play that this has seen, this thing is in very nice shape. Did a little teeny bit of work on, there was a nick right here, not deep or anything, but just a discoloration, and I just smoothed that down. A tool that I highly recommend if you're going to be working on guitars, especially working on bodies of guitars, one of these little cordless Dremels, just wonderful. And there's all sorts of different bits you can very easily put on them and use. Right now you can see I've got this somewhere between a sanding and buffing. It's slightly spongy, but enough friction, and it allows you to do very fine work with the paint and so forth. And what we're doing on the body here, let's switch over to the body. What we're doing on the body, as we've already discussed with the relicking, I'm just smoothing these pieces out. Just very gently using the Dremel kit there with that spongy head, very carefully smoothing these out until they're basically smooth to the touch. Then I'm going to work in a carnauba wax that I make. That's primarily melted carnauba flakes. It's got some mineral oil and a few other things in it to make it more workable, but that way we can maintain the relicking on this and allow those pieces to, those little bits of this guitar's history to shine through while protecting the wood underneath and making sure that it doesn't cause further damage to the paint and that sort of thing. You can also see that I've been putting the copper tape here in the cavity. Again, most important to put that around where your pickups are. And so we've got that working. Very easy to do. Just take your time, rip pieces off, and put it all throughout there. Very easy to do, and gives you a much better hum resistance for this old single coil style guitar. Now another thing, you can see they hid in there a little stamp there with the date on it. And so this was originally built in 1992, looks like. 8 and 12. So this is from 1992 and was made there August 12th. So almost exactly 32 years ago. So that's real interesting as well. They've got a neat thing here. This is not, I haven't seen this on many guitars, where it's got this piece that's got a little point on it, and what that does is it's like a friction plate that then digs into this little metallic disc right there, right near the joint of the neck. And what that does is gives just a little bit of extra stability, and as it really tightens down, it bites into that. You can see that tiny little ding there from where the bit bites into it. Gives just a little bit extra stability to it. Very neat little feature there. But overall, still very pleased with what I'm finding in this guitar. I think that with the work being done to it, getting the body so that it feels smooth all around, the paint is all smoothed out, and the finish is relic still, but smooth to the touch, that we're going to have a really cool classic guitar here. Here's another small point for consideration. I was looking at, here is the input jack for your instrument cable, and I was looking at that, inspecting it, just to see if I should maintain this or if I should replace it while I have it out, because it's an easy thing. If I want to replace it, it's going to take the same amount of work. But looking at this, it's actually quite a good input jack. This is still quite rigid. There's no give in it at all, and all the soldering is very well done. Again, I'm very impressed with the quality of the electronics in this guitar that I've found so far. Here I'm going to give you some sense of basically how I'm working with this Dremel with the buffer bit on it. Just very, very lightly going along the contours of these cuts and bruises that it has. It's very light. And what this accomplishes is, for one, it makes it feel better and allows me more direct access to the wood underneath so I can get some solid wax in there. But it also finds if there's any chips, like right here, this was cracked, and so as I'm distressing it slightly with my Dremel bit here, it's a few little flakes are coming off. But it's better to do that in the refinishing work than it just to flake off one day and you just have a gash there. And so as I'm working over this, I'm finding the little cuts and bruises and just kind of testing it with my bit lightly to try to soften the edges so there's nothing that is, now it's not going to ever be completely smooth as in one solid surface, but you don't want rough bits, you don't want edges, you don't want your nail catching at bits of paint and so forth. And so this helps to deburr all those little paint chips and soften all the edges until you get that nice smooth finish. So I suspect that this probably was dropped in terms of, well, we know it was dropped a bunch, but that it was dropped neck first at least once. A couple minor things that you can see that lead to this conclusion. There is a tiny little hairline crack right here, not too bad, and I did notice a little bit of separation coming out this way at the neck joint, very minor, but it didn't look like a craftsmanship issue. It looked like the wood had been bent out just a slight bit from a neck dive. And I also discovered, now that I'm getting into the fine details of the body, that there is a crack right there, probably from where it fell this way, and caused some pressure on that center block cut right there. So the way I'm gonna treat this, it's not broken off or anything, it's still on there, but I don't like to see cracks and I like to fill them. I typically use one of two things, either wood filler if I'm filling a hole like a screw hole, or in this case I use this really awesome super thin glue. Now this stuff is extremely dangerous. It will burn the heck out of you. Don't touch your fingers to it. You have to be very careful when handling it. I tend to use a junky old paintbrush, and I get the tip. After it hardens, you get this nice little chisel tip on there, and so I'll go in and get just a drop at a time. You want to work very carefully and slowly with this. What I'm going to do is, bit by bit, I'm going to drizzle it into this crack here. Right, I'm going to drizzle it into the crack and work that together. This stuff, it chemically it cooks somehow. It gets very hot, and it is really good at bonding fibers like this and really knitting those the wood fibers together. And so I believe I'm going to be able to treat and eliminate this crack here. There's a smaller one on this side, but this one is, you can actually even see it on the camera. So that's the next step.